Less than 1% of automatic transmissions reach 200,000 miles. Drivers want to blame the manufacturer, when in reality, it's their bad driving habits, and I'm here to prove it. Unless you have $8,000 to waste on a repair, avoid this first mistake. Number 17. Shifting from reverse to drive without stopping. When you're backing out of the driveway, but suddenly push the gear into drive and step on the gas, that's abuse. You're asking your transmission to do something it wasn't made for, which is to act like brakes. That sudden movement puts enormous strain on the internal clutch packs, which strip gear teeth. You're also stressing out the drive shafts, U-joints, and CV joints. In other words, you are ruining the drivetrain, and that's a $3,000 to $8,000 mistake. Now, some people argue that it all depends on the speed, and there is some truth to it. If you're reversing slowly under 5 miles per hour and you suddenly shift to drive, the car first slides into neutral. However, if you step on the gas immediately after moving to drive, you're killing your transmission, even at slow speeds. Always bring the car to a complete stop before shifting from reverse into drive or vice versa. While this mistake slowly ruins your car, the next one isn't as patient. Number 16, shifting to park before stopping. When you put an automatic car in park, you engage what's called the parking pawl. It's a small metal pin about the size of your pinky finger. When you hit park while the car is still moving, that pin is trying to slot into a spinning notched gear. That's the weird clanging sound you hear. In some cases, the pawl bounces off and there's no immediate trouble. But in other cases, the pin snaps immediately. And if your car is rear-wheel drive, this will lock the rear wheels, causing the vehicle to spin out. To fix the parking pawl, the mechanic has to remove the entire transmission. That's 12 to 15 hours of labor charges alone. You're looking at easily $1,500 in repairs. And yet, that's nothing compared to the hundreds of dollars wasted every year on the next mistake. Number 15, ignoring the recirculation button. Driving with the AC on full blast will tank your fuel economy by 25%. Not only is this bad for your mileage, but it's also bad for your compressor. However, there is a magical button that solves both problems. Before I tell you what it does, let me explain what happens when you ignore the recirculation button. A functioning AC blows air at between 40 and 50 degrees Fahrenheit. It does this by cooling the air coming into the cabin. So, when the weather gets to 100 degrees, your compressor is working overtime to make the conversion. This strain will cause it to wear out prematurely, costing you over $1,200. But when you hit the recirculation button, all of your problems go away. The recirculation button is a small button around your HVAC controls that looks like a U-turn arrow. Its job is to prevent outside air and smells from entering the cabin. When you press the recirculation button, your HVAC system cools the already cooled air. This means less strain on the compressor, lower fuel consumption, and cleaner cabin air. However, don't use this button during winter. In cold weather, you need fresh air to prevent window fogging. Plus, external air is also cooler anyway. Number 14, coasting in neutral. Some drivers believe that shifting to neutral while going down a hill will save them fuel. This is one of the most destructive fuel-saving myths because it literally destroys your transmission. When you lift off the gas in an automatic transmission, your car uses engine braking to slow down. Neutral disengages the clutch packs, which disconnects the engine's power from the wheels. That means your brakes have to work harder to bring your car to a stop. While you will save the tiniest amount of fuel, less than a syringe worth, you're risking your wallet and your life. The first immediate danger with this is that it increases stopping distances, which is a leading cause of crashes. The second problem is that your rotors and pads wear out quickly. That's $500 per axle every 30,000 miles or less. Regarding your transmissions, repeatedly cycling between drive and park places significant strain on the shift solenoids. This will cost another $800 to $2,000 to fix. The real danger is having to shift back into drive while you're still moving. that will ruin the clutch packs and you'll need a new transmission. This is the same risk you face if you also make the next mistake. Number 13, shifting to neutral at stoplights. I've seen dozens of customers who say they do this to rest the transmission. But in trying to help the transmission, they end up damaging it. Every time you shift from neutral to drive, the transmission has to engage the forward clutch pack. If you live in the city, you're adding thousands of shift cycles to the life of the transmission for no reason. It's like flicking a light switch on and off every time you walk past it. Eventually, the bulb is going to pop. Clutch seals have a finite life cycle. You're also stressing the shift solenoids and the transmission control module every single time. So while this habit won't destroy your transmission overnight, you're shaving years off its lifespan. Before you know it, you're spending $3,000 to $6,000 on a new transmission. But as I mentioned in the previous point, what happens when the light turns green before you fully come to a stop? You've pushed a moving vehicle into drive and decimated your tranny in the process. Leave your car in drive, step on the brake pedal, and let the torque converter do its job. Next, let's look at something that confuses half of all drivers. Number 12, ignoring dashboard warning lights. 51% of drivers have admitted they don't know what the different dashboard warning lights mean. While most can identify the check engine light, low oil pressure, frost warning, and active misfires might as well be algebraic geometry. But even when they know the meaning, drivers still ignore them. I've had customers come to the shop with a check engine light that stayed on for months because the car drove fine. What they don't know is that most cells start off mundane but end up ruining something expensive. One of the most common causes of cell is your car running rich. When this happens, unburnt fuel leaks into the catalytic converter. Once the cold liquid touches the hot honeycomb, you've got an instant chain reaction that will cost you $2,500 to fix. Ironically, most sensors can be cleaned or replaced for less than $50. The worst one is driving with an active misfire, which is when the check engine light starts flashing. This can cause immediate catastrophic engine failure. That's a $4,000 to $8,000 bill. You think that's bad? The next mistake can cost you your entire car. Number 11, not using the parking brake. Over the past 5 years, millions of cars have been recalled because of a rollaway risk. The latest victim is Ford, which is recalling 273,000 cars due to a software-related rollaway risk. When the software doesn't engage, the car can roll away even when it's in park. However, even when your vehicle doesn't have a factory defect, you must always use your handbrake or e-brake. When you put the car in park, it locks the transmission using the mechanical pawel we talked about earlier. Remember that this is a small pin, so it's not designed to hold your vehicle's full weight. This gets a lot worse on a slope because it is also fighting against gravity. This puts the transmission internals under constant stress. Eventually, the parking pawel will bend or snap. Once this happens, your car is going to roll away. Forget about a new engine or new transmission. You're going to pay for all of the damaged property along the way. That kind of damage will increase your insurance premium. Fixing the pawel alone will cost between $1,000 and $2,500. The correct way to park your car is to move it into neutral, pull the parking brake, then shift the gear into park. This keeps the weight of your car off the pawel completely. Let's look at something you must never do. Number 10, spinning wheels when stuck. Snow-related incidents account for over 150,000 auto crashes per year. This data doesn't include the hundreds of thousands of people who get stuck in winter and the millions spent on tranny repairs. When you're stuck in snow or mud, spinning the wheels generates massive friction and heat. But because the car isn't moving, the radiator cannot cool the transmission fluid effectively. That means you can cook your transmission fluid in seconds. If you start smelling burnt toast, it means your tranny fluid is gone. It can no longer lubricate the transmission. When you get out of the snow, you'll experience erratic shifting, slipping gears, and eventually complete transmission failure. But wait, it gets worse. When spinning wheels suddenly gain traction, it can cause drivetrain shock. The sudden hookup can snap axles or damage the differential. You're looking at over $4,000 in damages. Here's what you should do instead. First, turn off traction control. Second, get traction aids like floor mats, sand, or gravel under the tires. Third, accelerate gently as you rock the car back and forth. The absolute worst thing you can do in cold weather is a mistake 90% of drivers make. Number 9. Revving a cold engine. Back when cars had carburetors, this was the fastest way to warm them up during winter. But with modern engines, this is the fastest way to destroy the engine. When an engine has been sitting all night, even in warm weather, the oil drains down into the pan. For the first 30 seconds to a minute after a cold start, critical components like the cylinder walls, piston rings, camshaft lobes, and valve train are running on a thin film of oil. When you rev the engine, you're increasing the speed at which metal parts are slamming against each other. Your pistons slam into your cylinder walls, and the metal shavings end up circulating in the oil. That means you're sending shards flying around your entire engine, shredding the metallic surfaces. You will need to rebuild or replace your engine, which costs $3,000 to $5,000 for sedans and up to $8,000 for compact SUVs. Anything larger and you're approaching $10,000, all because you lacked a little patience. Start your car and begin driving it gently after 30 seconds. If the weather is below freezing, wait for a minute before you drive. Don't push the engine to about 2,500 RPM until it's warm. If you thought this approach was counterintuitive, wait until you see the next one. Number 8. Driving in D all the time, even on hills. This is one of the biggest misconceptions about automatic transmissions. Most people treat drive like a set it and forget it button. But when you're driving on hilly terrain or towing a load, this button will destroy your transmission. When you're descending a hill, the D gear causes the transmission to hunt for gears. This means that it's looking for the right gear to adequately manage the downhill momentum. It'll upshift, lose power, then downshift aggressively. The first part of the car that suffers is your brakes, because engine braking isn't doing its best. More importantly, constant hunting will cause the transmission fluid to overheat. Heat is the #1 killer of automatic transmissions. Transmission fluid is meant to operate at no more than 200 degrees Fahrenheit. Once it gets to 240, the fluid begins to oxidize and turn into a varnish that sticks to everything. The varnish then forms a glaze on the friction plates, which prevents lubrication, leading to slipping and more heat. Your only option will be a full transmission replacement. To prevent this unnecessary expense, put your car in 1, 2, or L when driving up or down hills and when carrying heavy loads. This prevents hunting and keeps your transmission and brakes cool. However, there is such a thing as your transmission being too cool, as you're about to see. Number 7. Driving through deep water. The general rule is to never drive in water deeper than 4 inches. Sure, most cars have a clearance that's at least 4.7 inches, but water isn't stationary. Once the water splashes into your engine, it can cause over $10,000 worth of damage. The first problem is if water gets into the air intake and into the cylinder. Water cannot be compressed, but the piston will try to compress whatever enters the cylinder. The result is something called hydrostatic lock or hydrolock. When the piston can't complete its movement, the engine seizes and the car stalls immediately. This often results in broken connecting rods and cracked cylinder heads. That's a $5,000 repair, but we're not done. Next, when water gets into the transmission fluid via the breather cap, it creates the strawberry milkshake problem. This foam mixture has zero lubricating properties and will cause your gears to start slipping before complete transmission failure. That's another $5,000 repair, but we're still not done. Other problems with driving in deep water include water contaminating the electronic unit. We're talking ECU sensors and the ignition module. This is a $1,500 to $3,000 repair. At this point, you might as well buy a new car. But if you do, the next mistake will bring you back to square one. Number 6. Delaying oil changes. I get it. car maintenance costs are through the roof. Over the past 5 years, car repair and maintenance costs have been up nearly 50%. However, delaying an oil change doesn't save you money. On the contrary, it can cost you an engine. Engine oil has an expiration point. Once it goes through too many heat cycles and gets contaminated with oil, water, and metal shavings, the oil loses all lubricity. At this point, you might as well have cooking oil in your engine. It means that your engine isn't being protected. Even worse, this contaminated oil then turns into sludge, a thick, tar-like substance. Sludge blocks oil passages and restricts lubrication. This will cause overheating, increased metal-on-metal contact, and then engine failure. That is why you must change your oil on time, every time. And don't go by what your manual says. Car manufacturers try to make car ownership look cheaper than it is. Plus, they want you to upgrade your car every 100,000 miles. Change your oil every 5,000 miles with full synthetic or 3,000 miles with conventional. The 10,000-mile oil change in your manual is a myth, and it's just as damaging as the next one. Number 2. Overfilling oil. Here's a rookie mistake made by everyone learning how to change oil. You see the dipstick line where it says full, but you figure a little extra won't hurt. It should give you more time until your next refill. What ends up happening is the opposite. Too much oil means the oil level is above the crankshaft's path inside the engine. Every time the crankshaft spins, it will hit the surface of the oil pool. This beats the oil like a whisk, beating egg whites, turning the oil into a frothy foam. Your oil pump cannot pump foam, so this creates two problems. The first is that the engine doesn't get proper lubrication. The second is that this process creates back pressure and forces oil into places it doesn't belong, like the combustion chamber or intake manifold. Oil in the combustion chamber burns and builds carbon deposits on valves and pistons, and some of that oil leaks into the catalytic converter. It's a chain of events that can damage emissions equipment and your engine. That's over $7,500 in repairs. All of the mistakes so far can cost you thousands when ignored, but the last one can cost you your life. Number 1. Aggressive stop-and-go driving. Everybody is guilty of this. The moment the light turns green, all of a sudden you're a NASCAR driver. Then when you see an amber light up ahead, you try to beat it, but end up slamming the brakes a little too hard. Every hard acceleration slams the transmission through gear changes under maximum load. This puts maximum stress on the clutch packs and the torque converter. Then when you brake hard, you're hammering the brake pads, rotors, and suspension components. This aggressive cycle also hammers your CV joints and engine mounts. You're essentially wearing out the metal and rubber components of your car at 3 times the normal rate. The end result is transmission failure, engine failure, and brake replacements. Over a lifetime, this can amount to tens of thousands of needless repairs. What's worse is the danger you're putting yourself and other drivers into. This singular habit leads to over 1,000 deaths a year. Smooth acceleration and coasting toward red lights will save your brakes, your transmission, and your life. Avoid these 17 traps, and your car will easily get to 200,000 miles. But if you want it to reach 700,000 miles, there's a very important maintenance trick you can't afford to miss.